This week I'm going to talk about my first pottery wheel. I took about 5 weeks worth of classes at the local pottery store and got pretty excited about it. Learned a lot of things about how to throw some clay, but started looking around at the potter's wheels and they're expensive. I mean, even the manual ones where you've got to kick your own foot and try to time your foot and your hands together, those are still several $100s. And I really didn't think I had the coordination to do hands and feet at the same time. I can't dance or anything like that. So I was like, looked on Amazon, couldn't really find anything. And then a couple weeks ago, one popped up for $200. I think it's 220 if it had a pedal. And so you had a $200 model that had like a stick that you could use to control the speed, or the $220 model where you used a pedal. So I went ahead and sent off for that. And it took about a week to get here, even with Prime, so it was coming from China. But it got here pretty quick, and started playing with it. And it's a little bit shorter than I expected. It's about 13 inches tall. So I put it up on my workbench, and the workbench was too high. So I put it on this table, and table's still too high for to sit down and do it. But I tried my hand at doing it standing up. But the thing I found out there was when you're standing up, you don't have anything to lock your elbow into. So your elbow's just kind of wiggling around, and the clay can push you around. So it's really hard to center the clay since you can't lock your hands and hold them steady. So after this first disaster, I got to cut off the clay pot, put the clay to the side. I use that for some other cool projects because you don't really want to re-throw wet clay. It's not going to stick to the table. But the good news was that the first set of clay stuck really well. And I mean, you just dampen the table, dry it off a little bit so it's not wet. You just want it damp. Then you stick the clay to it, and it stuck great. But without the leverage, that was kind of a pain. So went off and cleaned it up. And one thing about cleaning, the tray on this table is not removable. But if you use a sponge, you just sponge up all the mud, dump it into your bucket, and it cleans up really nice, as you can see. So I don't see the non-removable tray as that big of a disadvantage, especially for the price. But got it all cleaned up, and then I went ahead and pulled out my stool and measured to see what the distance from the top of the wheel to the edge of my wrist with my wrist locked into my hip was. And that distance was about 10 inches. So I decided to go ahead and build a little stand that lifted this table up 10 inches. And so here's my second attempt with the new stand. So again, went ahead and got the top wet and then dried it off so it's just damp. Took about, I think this is 1.5 pounds of clay, and got it nice and warmed up. Plopped it down. Boom, it stuck. So then I go ahead and made a good seal between the clay and the wheel, and got my hands wet, got the clay wet, and started turning. And so this pedal is really good. It's a lot better than the ones that I had in class. The ones in class either were full speed ahead or absolute stopped. So those were pretty sensitive. I guess they had years of clay built up in them, and every time you stepped on them, they'd just move like all the way to the ground or not. This one did a good job. It's nice and fresh, so you can adjust it, and then once you've got it adjusted, you can take your foot off of it, and it'll stay at that speed. So that's good. And you don't have a bat, so removing it I thought would be a challenge, but it's actually not too bad. I mean, you can run the wire in there, and there's plenty of room with this splash tray that you can get the wire underneath the clay and get a good cut off at the bottom of it. And so now that I can lock my elbow into my hip, centering goes a lot better. Obviously, I'm still new to this whole pottery thing, so centering takes a little bit of practice. And actually I've got it about where I want it. It's pretty well centered. So now I'm going to go ahead and make a hole in the middle. Well, a couple fine touches on the centering. Now I'll make the hole in the middle. And just put your thumbs together, find the exact center, and kind of start a divot in the center. And then get it nice and wet again. And poke fingers down in there nice and stiff. And then make your hole a little bit bigger. And as you can tell, I still have a lot to learn. My hole's not perfectly centered, so we'll see how this pot turns out. But now I go ahead and pull the walls up. And gotta keep it wet. And the nice thing is this table runs off of just standard 110 power, so no special wiring required or anything like that. Do keep it hooked up to a surge protector just in case. I mean, messing around with something that's got water, so it's a good idea to have a surge protector on it. And my lip of my pot got a little out of control here, so let's see if we can recover that. And you can't hear it on the audio here, but the wheel's actually pretty quiet. It's not loud at all. Not any louder than the ones we had in class. So pretty impressive for $200. And I cannot recover the lip, so I'm going to just go ahead and cut that off. So I get my needle tool and get this thing going steady. And now we'll clean that lip up again, because now it's just a flat needle tool lip and I don't want that. Get it nice and smooth. And the wobble's in my pot, not in the wheel, so still got a lot to learn. But I'm able to get the pot back to fairly straight here. Fairly even thickness. I think my mistake was when I started off and did the hole in the middle, didn't get it quite perfectly in the middle. I think I had the clay pretty well centered, but didn't get the hole started quite right. And that's it. Completed pot. Looks pretty good. Go ahead and find my wire here and then give us a good dousing. You want the wheel nice and wet when you go to cut it, because you don't want the pot to stick back to the wheel. And you also want the pot nice and dry on the inside, so I'll go ahead and dry it out. That way, if you leave it too wet on the inside, it won't dry properly, it'll crack. And that's not good, so get in there and get it nice and dry. Alright, clean up a couple of little burrs around the edges. Get off the little pieces. And make sure it's good and dry on the inside. And now I'll grab my wire and keep it nice and flat against the wheel. And I saw one guy that said pushing it away from you actually helps because you're not likely to pull it up at the end like you are if you pull it towards you. So that's something I'll keep in mind for next time. And I forgot to douse the wheel. It got dry while I was drying the inside, so got to cut it again. So now that the wheel's nice and wet, I'll cut it, and then I'll slide the pot off of the clay so it doesn't stick back. Alright. Now just clean some of the old clay off. Get that off out of the way, off to the side. Use that later for some small project. And then I need a board to dry it on, so let me go grab that board real quick and I'll be right back. And so I want to slide this pot onto this board, but first I need to get the board nice and wet. That way the pot doesn't stick to the board. Slide across there nice and easy. Now just let it dry till it's leather hard and clean it up. Do all the trimming. After I watch a couple of excellent videos on pottery trimming to refresh myself. And now I need to clean it up. This time I'll use the big sponge. And it takes about 4 minutes to clean it up, so I'll just fast forward through this. But basically you just sponge off the wheel, get everything into the splash pan, and then absorb all the water. And luckily it comes up pretty easy. I mean, this plastic's pretty good about not holding on to the mud, so it comes pretty clean. And remember, don't dump clay down your kitchen or bathroom fixtures. Just take the clay outside. Okay, here's the stand that I built. Basically just built it about 10 inches, which was the distance I needed to get my wrist level with the top of the pottery wheel. And I put 3 screws in each leg to stabilize it. I built 4 legs on there. Make sure and leave whatever the width of your plywood is so that you've got that as part of your total height. My plywood was 3/4 inch. And I also left the width of a 2x4 around the edge, so if I wanted to come back and reinforce the legs, I could put a 2x4 on the bottom of it all the way around to kind of trim it and give it even more support than it has. But really it seemed pretty stable. There was like 1 or 2 points when I was scraping clay off the top or something like that that it jiggled a little bit, but for the most part it was really stable. So I don't think I'll need the extra reinforcements. But doesn't hurt to build and future-proof it just in case. And that's about it. I mean, thank you. If you enjoyed my video, please give me a like and a subscribe. And hope you enjoy doing some pottery.